So we give you the information. The next thing in Alice, the C is for counter. Counter, ladies and gentlemen, is not fighting. I'll prove to you. If, where's Kyle? There's Kyle. So if Kyle decides, you know what, that's it. I had enough of this church mutual stuff. I'm going off the deep end. If Kyle presents a weapon from where he's standing, anybody think, well, let me back up a step. In order for me to fight somebody, what do I have to do? I got to get within arm's reach of you. If I'm standing right here, by a show of hands, how many of you think it's a good idea for me to go from here to there to try to punch Kyle in the snot locker? Who thinks that's a good idea? It's a terrible idea. So I can't fight Kyle from this position. My legs aren't even long enough, let alone my arms. So I can't fight that man. So counter's not fighting. What is it? It's taking back control. I can affect Kyle's ability to be accurate at trying to shoot me from right here. You doggone right. So it's not fighting. It's taking back control. It has to be age and physical appropriate. Now, on the screen it says it's a last resort. I'm going to disagree with our own PowerPoint. And so does Greg. Because here's why I disagree with it. If we say it's a last resort, then that means I have to do something else leading up to it. So I go back to the example I used earlier. Kyle is now our bad guy. We want to lock him down in here? Guess what? Counter can be for the first group of people in that back row. It's not your first resort. That just became your first option. Because you were in distance where you can get your hand on that individual and start taking back some control. Long before I can get there. I can aid you in doing so by interrupting his OODA loop. I'm going to prove to you, how many of you in this room think that you multitask? Remember, y'all, we in church. There we go. Okay. You think you can multitask. I'm going to prove to you that the human brain cannot multitask. The human brain is only capable of attending to one thing at a time. It will only attend to one thing or any other thing, but the human brain cannot attend to two tasks at the same time. So I can buy those folks in the back some time by causing an OODA loop interruption in Kyle's brain, buying us some time to take back that control. And how do I do that? Well, in order to shoot people accurately, several things have to take place. You have to acquire your target. You have to get that target within your sight picture. You need to have a good grip on the gun, have a good shooting platform, so a good stance, good grip on the gun, trigger control, because even outside of the stance, that trigger control is going to actually affect more of that shot than anything else. Right? And I'm not going to spend time getting into nomenclature and proper shooting techniques. That's a different conversation. But if I can affect these steps, I now affect the physical and the mental, which is a process, right? I can put a handgun in the hand of a mechanical robot and squeeze the trigger. And that gun, at 50 yards, will fire dead accurate, right smack dab in the middle of the red of the bullseye of a target. The question is, if I put that gun in your hands, because I know the gun is capable, but are you? And if I can affect your ability to be capable of being accurate, I increase my odds. You got to understand. You look at this slide, police officers, if you look at the numbers, we're terrible. This slide clearly states that our bad guy is more accurate than our law enforcement. The question is, why? Why are our bad guys hitting at a 50% or higher rate? Because our targets are in a sterile, stagnant, non-contested environment. If I take 50 of you and put you over in that corner, how much skill set do I need to possess to hit half of you? 5.5 pounds of pressure in this booger picker. That's all I need. If I take that gun and put the muzzle of that gun in that direction and put 5.5 pounds of pressure from this finger on that trigger, and you can do nothing else but hide in that corner, I'm going to hit half of you. And I don't even have to look at you. Because you've been empowered to do nothing. That is why our gunmen hit percentage is far better than our law enforcement. If we change the game and put our gunmen in the same position we put our cops on the street, what do you think is going to happen to that number? It's going to look like that number. Guys, we're not dealing with tactically trained individuals. These active killers are minimally trained. In a K-12 setting, we're dealing with a 15 to 19-year-old who plays video games. We're not dealing with highly tactically trained individuals. They take BB guns, airsoft guns, small caliber guns, shoot them at empty paint cans, bowling pins, picture paper targets. We're not dealing with SEAL teams. We're not dealing with airborne rangers. We're not dealing with highly skilled, trained, tactical operators. My 5-year-old boy, if I put 50 of y'all in that corner, he too can hit half of you. He's got no weapon proficiency. But what does he have? A target-rich environment. That's why these numbers are the way they are. This guy is operating in a target-rich environment. This guy doesn't care about the person to the right or to the left or behind or in front. Active killers have one goal, one mission, one objective: to kill as many people as they possibly can before the cops get there or you do something about it. So if I'm pointing the gun at you and I miss you but I hit him, guess what that is? Still body. Just that simple. So how do we use this counter strategy? You heard me refer to Kyle when I said I have to cause multiple OODA loop interruptions. Anybody familiar with Colonel Boyd? Nobody? 1, 2, okay. So this OODA loop, and not really getting into it, but if you really, really, truly want to understand the whole OODA loop process, Google Colonel Boyd and the OODA loop. Very, very good information out there about this whole OODA loop process and how it started. But the very quick and dirty of it is Colonel Boyd determined that if he could cause interruptions in the brain capacity of the enemy fighter pilots, then he can put the U.S. fighter pilots in a better position, in a tactical position, to combat the enemy. That's the 30-second elevator version of it, all right? And so the OODA loop, what is that? It's observe, orient, decide, act. It's a process that most of you use every single day. You just don't know it had a name. And the easiest way to explain it is think about it this way: driving, right? You're driving down the road. You're on the highway, and someone puts their blinker on because they want to change lanes and get in front of you, right? So what do? We observe that blinker, right? That flashing light has now caught our attention through the sense of vision. So we observe it. Now we orient to what it is. It's no longer just this blinking thing. Now we acknowledge, oh, it's the right or the left blinker, right? So we observed it. We've oriented to what it is. Now we have to make a decision. Am I going to let this person in, or do I speed up? Oh, I'm the only one that does that? Thought I was in good company. So we make that decision. Now we act out that decision. We either slow down or we speed up. And so that's really the process of how we make decisions all the time, right? We get some information, we see something, there's some sort of intelligence, there's a stimulus that we're getting, whether it be auditory, whether it be vision. We process it, identify what it is, make a decision, and then follow through with our decision. And so the counter in Alice is simply causing multiple OODA loop interruptions. And so what does that look like, right? How does this whole thing work out? How do we process that? So we observe, right? So in the observe phase for the active killer, it's the target acquisition, the people, right? What we have to do to disrupt that is cause him to focus somewhere else. So we start affecting major senses. Hearing, so we affect them auditory, and we affect it with vision. Your vision, vision from a human being, is a direct conduit to one's brain. It is the fastest way to impact a human being's brain is through vision, right? So now what I want to do, I want to take that target acquisition and I want to disrupt that. So what do? I make noise. Movement. I put distance between me and the bad guy. So now the noise, now I'm affecting the auditory. Movement is going to affect the vision because now those movements through that field of vision at 120 degrees, I'm now affecting the processor of following through the action. You with me so far? So that's the observe. How do we affect and what portion affects the orient? Well, it's very simple. The guy with the gun has to get the gun in his hand, right? We talked about that grip. Good stance, a good shooting platform. So now he's oriented to the position of readiness to follow through, acquiring that target, making the decision that that's the person I want to shoot, and following up with the action of squeezing the trigger. So how do I disrupt that? I now put that person off balance. And I can do that again through any of the major senses. Ultimately, I really want to try to affect that vision, all right? So we observe, we orient it, we're now down to that decision phase, right? So he's got that sight picture. This is where we want to stop this process before we get to the act. If we stop it at the observe, great. If we get to observe, orient, we stop it, great. Observe, orient, decide, but we've got to interrupt this process before he gets to the action of squeezing that trigger. So now I want to take this guy, and instead of us being on defense, I want him on defense, right? I want to put him on defense. Now he's got to combat us because we've taken back control. We put ourselves in that offensive position, and we flipped the script, all right? And so as long as we interrupt that process along the way, if we can do that before he gets to the action of actually putting 5.5 pounds of pressure on that trigger, then we can buy ourselves some time, A, taking back that control, B, getting away, right? And so what does that look like? How does this whole thing work? Understanding that this is a very, very, very quick process. Very quick process. Okay? OODA loop interruptions are not minutes or hours long. Okay? They buy you seconds. Okay? But multiple interruptions can buy you more seconds. All right? Again, to be able to either remove myself or render that location no longer dangerous. Why'd you look up at the ball? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why'd you look up at the ball? Sir, why'd you look up at the ball? No, you looked up at the ball. You came back to me, but you looked up at the ball. What happened to these gentlemen right here? Was that ball going to hit you, sir? It was way over your head. But what did I do? I affected your 120 degrees. Remember I told you earlier the human brain cannot multitask? It can only attend to one thing at a time. Guess what happened? Squirrel. Right? Now, just like this gentleman here, he addressed the ball and very quickly came back to me. Again, one task. You can go from task to task very quickly, right? So he addressed the ball and then came back to me. So what do I need to do? I need to cause another interruption. And I need to cause as many interruptions as I can, overloading that brain with stimulus until what? I remove myself from the danger, or we can render that location no longer dangerous. In a stress-induced environment, the only portion of your brain that is available for recall is your amygdala. Okay? And so, why does this make sense? How does this come into play? It comes into play because I know that if I can cause his focus to go from me to that object, there's only two other things I can do from there. I got to remove myself or get my hands on him before he comes back onto target there, right? And if I don't cause enough interruptions and I don't overload that brain with enough stimulus, he's going to be able to get back on task. He's going to be able to get back on target, all right? And so the forebrain, the frontal lobe of your brain, will shut down in a stress-induced environment. I need a volunteer. Kyle, give me one of your people, please. Don't all jump at once. You volunteering, sir? I am. All right, I appreciate it. What's your name?
Rick.
Rick, come on up here, Rick. Everybody give Rick a round of applause. All right, Rick. You don't have any weapons on you, do you?
No.
You sure?
Pocket knife.
You got a pocket knife? All right, I can deal with that. All right. All right. Maybe I should be nervous now. What else you got, Rick? All right. So, here's what I want you to do. Can you catch a ball?
I'll try.
All right, here you go. Throw it back to me. Throw it back to me. Now see, typical of a male, what is Rick doing? Mm-hmm. Because why? Now I'm challenging him, right? Well, yeah, I can catch him all the way back here, and back here, and back here. Rick, don't run away from me. Stay right there. All right, ready? Hold that ball. Squeeze it. Stress ball? Stress ball? Is it a stress ball?
Stress ball?
Yep, squishy ball. Not gonna hurt you, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yes? All right, throw it back to me. Great, here's another one. Squeeze it. Stress ball, just like this one. Not gonna hurt you, right? All right, throw it back. Okay. What was Rick doing throughout that entire conversation? He looked at me. As soon as his hand moved, He went from looking at me, looking at that ball. All right. Now, Rick, I'm going to give you a set of instructions. I need you to follow the instructions. Are you ready? Same stress balls. You can hold them. There's no magic here, no tricks. All right. I'm going to throw that ball at you. Don't move. Don't blink. Do not try to catch it. Do you understand the instructions? Can you repeat them back to me?
Don't look at the ball, don't move, and don't try to catch it.
Okay. Are you ready? You sure? You didn't know you were signing up for this, did you? All right. Rick, I forgot to tell you that in high school and college, I did pitch. I throw a fastball around 72, 74 miles an hour, all right? But squishy ball, not going to hurt you. Just want to double check? I got nothing in my pockets. Okay, all right. No, just kidding. All right, are you ready? What are the instructions?
Don't look at the ball, don't move, and don't try to catch it.
Okay, all right, you ready? All right, here we go. All right, Rick, let's try this again. Because that one didn't work out too well, did it? Squishy ball, not going to hurt you. Yes?
Yes.
Don't move, don't blink, don't try to catch it. What are the instructions?
Don't move, don't blink, and don't try to catch it.
Okay. Anybody else want to do this? Okay. Are you ready? All right, here we go. Ah! I got you and some of you guys out there. So, I won't torture you anymore, Rick. Thank you. Rick, come here. So, we're done. And, here's a souvenir for you. So, you understood the instructions, correct? You repeated them back to me. Mm-hmm. Why were you not able to accomplish the instructions?
Physical reaction, involuntary reaction.
Mm-hmm. Why?
I'm human.
Mm-hmm. And what does the human body do facing danger?
Defend.
Protects itself, right?
Yes.
Why were you not able to follow the instructions? You knew it was a squishy ball, right? Mm-hmm. You knew it wasn't going to hurt you. Why weren't you able to follow the instructions?
I don't know.
I'll tell you why. Because in a stress-induced environment, your forebrain shuts down. Your forebrain, that frontal lobe. Thank you, sir. No, you can keep the ball. Thank you.
Can I get my pocket
Yes,
knife?
you can get your pocket knife back. Sorry. Thank you. He was so polite about it. In a stress-induced environment, your frontal lobe, your forebrain, where you process new information, shuts down. I told you several minutes ago, the only portion of your brain that is available for recall in a stress-induced environment is your amygdala. Your amygdala is basically like a Rolodex. Once the sight or the sound sense has affected the brain, the body now determines it is a stress-induced environment, it shuts down. The body of the brain does not delineate levels of stress. So where's Rick? Rick's body doesn't say, hey, it's a stress ball. It is on or off. And that's the thing about counter people don't understand is it's not about fighting a guy with a gun with a rock or a book or a whatever. It's if I can get this thing to simply get you and you and you to stop focusing on me, to focus on something else, it now puts me in a better position. The object, really, ladies and gentlemen, is quite irrelevant. I'm just using the object to affect your vision. Whatever the object is, as long as I can make it go airborne and get you to squirrel, I can cause an OODA loop interruption. To be really effective, I need to cause a lot of those to overload your brain with stimulus to prevent you from getting back on task. You guys with me? Does that make sense? This is why when people say, did you guys hear about that school in the western part of Pennsylvania? They made 20/20 and 60 Minutes, and they were crucifying that superintendent for putting river rocks in buckets in the classrooms. Do you guys remember hearing that? And people were going crazy. Oh, you guys are idiots. That superintendent should be fired. You're gonna get kids killed. You telling me that you want these kids to fight a guy with a gun with rocks? What I'm telling you is, I don't care if it's a rock, if it's a staple remover, if it's a stapler, if it's a tape dispenser, or if it's a red, stupid, squishy Alice stress ball. I'm not fighting the gun with the rock. I'm fighting the guy's brain and his mental capacity to tell this booger picker to put 5.5 pounds of pressure on the trigger to shoot you. That's what I'm fighting. The gun and the rock are a substance that is controlled by what? The brain. And as long as I can control and occupy your brain and divide your attention, for you to have target acquisition, sight picture, sight alignment, good stance, good grip is really difficult to do. So I want you to understand, it's not about the object. It's about controlling this thing, because this thing controls this thing. Does that make sense? It's amazing to me the number of people who want to fight the idea of counter. You guys can't be telling kids, you guys can't be telling people to counter. You're going to get them killed. It's more dangerous. Really. Because putting people in that corner, tucking their tail, closing their eyes, tucking their head in their arms, that's not dangerous? How many of you have kids? Sir, how old are your children? 14, 12, and 9. 14, 12, and 9. God bless you. So you're a 14-year-old. Boy or girl? Girl. When did you start talking to your 14-year-old about stranger danger? What age?
Years ago, like
7, 9. When you were talking to your daughter, what's your daughter's name?
Katie.
When you were talking to Katie about stranger danger, and you told her that if she's in a park or if she's walking and some guy comes up and offers her candy, flowers, help me find my lost dog, what'd you tell your daughter to do? Don't
Go with him.
Don't go with him. What'd you tell her to do?
Run.
Run. Okay. What'd you tell her to do if the guy started chasing her?
Yell, make noise, pay attention.
Okay. What'd you tell her to do if the guy actually caught her and tried to force her in the car?
Fight back.
Huh. Noise, movement, distance, put off balance, distraction, put on defense. You've been telling your daughter to counter since she was 4 or 5. Only problem was, ladies and gentlemen, we didn't call it counter back then. We called it stranger danger. But I didn't tell you to do anything different today than you've been telling your little boy or your little girl to do at a public playground. Not a single thing different. You told Katie to run. Movement. You told her to yell, scream, draw attention, noise, distance. I don't see how people struggle with this idea. But yet all across the country, we get people, can't do that. You guys at this Alice place, you're crazy. You're going to get people killed. Well, let me ask you a question. What's your name, sir? Kevin. Kevin? Katie's 14 years old. So she's probably, what, a freshman in high school? Freshman in high school. If Katie were to die at the hands of a gunman at her freshman year in high school, or if she were to die at the hands of a child molester, are you and your wife going to grieve any differently? No. No. If the outcome's the same on both ends, it's just the only difference is how we got there. So I struggle with the idea that people struggle. It's okay to do those things. It's okay to counter for a child molester. But it's not okay to counter for an individual with a weapon in their hand? Folks, I told you earlier, this is the mental game. You got to look at things very differently. If you're willing to tell your son or daughter to do exactly what Kevin told his son or told Katie to do, if it'll work for a child abductor, which, by the way, I don't know, beginning of summer, anybody hear about the girl who was about to be abducted by the individual when she threw her cup of coffee at him and got away? Yeah, that's called counter. Anybody hear the name Jason Seaman? Noblesville Middle School, Noblesville, Indiana. Yeah. He gave a kid a hall pass in his science class to go to the bathroom. The kid went to his bathroom. After he went to his locker, got a gun loaded, and came back to Jason's classroom. You know how Jason stopped that event? With a basketball. He threw a basketball at him. Can't throw a basketball at somebody with a gun in their hand. You're going to get killed. Jason's alive. Jason was shot, but Jason's alive. Why? Because he bought himself just enough time to cause a new loop interruption, to take that. Now that active killer no longer has that headshot, now it's a shoulder. Now it's an arm, an elbow, a wrist. Folks, you need to understand, 80% of the time this event, over 80% of the time this event will not end until aggressive action is taken. The question becomes, by who? Is it going to be you? Are you going to wait for the police? Or are you going to hope he takes his own life? But while you're sitting there trying to figure it out, time's going by. Time costs lives. For those of you that like formulas and equations, there's one for you. Time costs lives. We've got to do something. If you want this event to end fast and you want to increase odds of survival, you've got to do something about it. Whatever that aggressive action is, you got to do something about it.